here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. We're going to have a little fun. We always have fun. Even when we're serious, we have fun. On Fox News yesterday, our good buddy, Brett Baer, had Bill Barr on his show. And unbeknownst to me, Brett decided to play some of my statement on Hannity from the night before. And I'm glad he did. And Mediocrite, which is filled with prepubescent Neanderthals, they put a headline in there that has no connection to the discussion. And we've come to notice here that when Mediocrite does that, the Huffington Post and the Daily Beast usually regurgitate it. Now, why is that? Because they're stupid, that's why. We don't much care about that. We more care about what Bill Barr said. Bill Barr is a former attorney general, twice. Bill Barr was attorney general before Hillary Clinton destroyed her emails and destroyed her cell phones and had a private server in her home basement, which had classified information traveling through it. And he was attorney general after that occurred as well. Now his purpose in life is as a attack dog against Trump. He wanted Trump indicted. The enemy, the adversaries at the Department of Justice and FBI heard his calls, figured they'd get cover from him, and he's on a conga line of media visits, whether it be Meet the Press or CBS or any of the rest, where he's welcome. Wasn't welcome before, but he's welcome now. But let's listen to what he said, and let's see if it makes any sense. Okay? So Brett Baer starts with an audio clip or a video clip of me. Cut one, go. It's called the Presidential Records Act because he is the executive branch. He's the executive branch. So he doesn't have to rely on some subordinate. Here are the regulations. This is the way you do it, Mr. President. His power comes from the Constitution. He is a third branch of government. Him. He alone. Everything else flows from him.
Mark Levin last night on Hannity about the Presidential Records Act and how that fits into the former president's defense. Let's talk about former President Trump and President Biden's legal troubles with former Attorney General Bill Barr. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Brett.
You listened to Mark there, and he is saying that the Presidential Records Act covers what they're seeing here. How do you see that?
Yeah, I think the position is being taken that this is really just a document dispute over custody of documents, and the president has good arguments as to why he should have kept them. I think the arguments are farcical and will be shown as such. But I also think, more importantly, they're sidelight and they're distracting from the real issue. The president is being prosecuted here because it's an obstruction case, and he's in trouble for what he did after he got the subpoena. If he thought he had arguments that these were his documents, there are many things he could have done to raise those arguments. He could have moved to quash the subpoena. He could have given the documents to the government and then sued to bring him back and made his legal arguments as to why they're really his. But he didn't do that. What did he do? He engaged in an outrageous act of obstruction and deception that obstructed that subpoena. And that is wrong. That's a law. That's a violation of law. That's a serious problem for him. What he did was, according to the indictment, he took a lot of the boxes away, hid them from his lawyer, told his lawyer to go and search what remained, and then caused that lawyer to file a statement of the court saying that there had been a complete search. And if anyone did that, that would be obstruction. So that is why I think the Justice Department pulled the trigger, and that's the central part of this case. So talking about whether he had the right to have the documents or not, while it's ridiculous, it's a sideshow. He has you cannot defend what he did with that subpoena.
Now, that's very interesting, so I want to respond to this. Here's one thing Bill Barr cannot do. Bill Barr cannot answer the question, and it's not put to him, if it's an obstruction case. When Hillary Clinton destroyed over 30,000 emails, or had them destroyed, when they destroyed her old cell phones with hammers, all of which were under subpoena, she wasn't investigated for obstruction, let alone accused of obstruction, let alone formally charged with obstruction. Why is that? You just said, Mr. Barr, that nobody can dispute that this is an obstruction case, that the president's conduct was outrageous, and that my argument is ridiculous. I didn't just fall off the turnip truck yesterday. It wasn't that long ago. It wasn't that long ago when the former Secretary of State did what she did. And so, of course, the issue comes down to, among other things, whose documents are they? What law applies? As for subpoenaing the records, you talk about what President Trump could have done. I will tell you what the government could have done. The government could have used the Presidential Records Act. It could have made a claim, perhaps, that those records need to go to the National Archives, where this matter would be sorted out. I don't agree with that, but you can make that argument. Go to a federal judge. Tell the federal judge, we need an order to get the documents from Donald Trump and his lawyers, because we don't believe that they have the right to keep them under the Presidential Records Act. He didn't have to go to a 5-alarm fire. The law is an administrative law. There are civil, potentially, remedies. There are remedies in equity, if you will. And you go to the federal judge, and this is done all the time. I've done this. And you say, we have reason to believe there's problems with these documents. We need to get control over these documents. Can we have an order? And if the judge agrees with you, you're applying the correct law, not the underlying law, the Espionage Act, but the right law, the Presidential Records Act, a possession issue. The judge can issue the order. Turn the documents over. This is how I want them turned over. This is the place and time I want them turned over. No delay. Every damn one of them. And if the judge's order is defied, the judge can hold that party or those parties in civil or even criminal contempt. A couple of years back, when I was running Landmark Legal Foundation, we were involved in a very complex piece of litigation with the Environmental Protection Agency. We sought an order from the judge before the end of the Bush administration, I guess it was, to direct the EPA to secure all the records that we had sought in our Freedom of Information Act litigation. The EPA was represented by the United States Attorney's Office in Washington, D.C. And the assistant U.S. attorney gets up in court and says, we don't need an order. There's no reason to believe that the EPA will destroy, or even more, won't secure these records after the end of the Bush administration. I said, the assistant U.S. attorney doesn't work there unless the assistant U.S. attorney is willing to put his name on a piece of paper. Then don't believe him. The judge ruled for the government. The new administration comes in, and it turns out the EPA destroyed its backup records. After 60 days of retaining records, these are the old days, they had these records electronically, and their system was set up to destroy them every 60 days, destroy them, all of them, day after day after day after day after day. We went back in front of that judge, and I said to the judge, well, Your Honor, we needed that order, you know. We didn't get that order. Now, keep in mind, I'm not the U.S. attorney. The U.S. attorney is on the other side, defending the conduct of the agency. And the judge turns to the assistant U.S. attorney and says, is Mr. Levin correct? And he sheepishly says, yes, but it wasn't intended. And I said, yes, but they were on notice. And that's good enough. And it went on, and other things happened. We eventually got a contempt order. Why? Because the judge finally did issue an order. And they violated that order, too. And the judge says, Mr. Levin, the court would be willing to entertain a request by you to hold the government, the EPA, in civil or criminal contempt. So we gave the judge an option. Go ahead, civil or criminal. He chose civil contempt. There was no federal grand jury that was impaneled. There was no search warrant, which only the government could get anyway. SWAT teams didn't arrive at the various homes of the officials, even though twice now records were in fact destroyed. Nobody was indicted. I'm embarrassed by Bill Barr and what he says and how he says it. I don't know if he has much litigation experience or not. I just don't know. But it's embarrassing when he sits there on Fox and he says this is an obstruction case. Well, what kind of an obstruction case? It's a criminal obstruction case. Well, then why wasn't there an obstruction case brought against Hillary Clinton? Hillary Clinton didn't even have the benefit of the Presidential Records Act. It didn't cover her. She was a Secretary of State. She had nowhere to hide. Nowhere. So why did the same Department of Justice, the same Federal Bureau of Investigation, decide not only wasn't she charged with obstruction, that they weren't even going to investigate her for obstruction? How does Bill Barr square this? He can't. And he won't. He'll go around, oh, this is ridiculous. Oh, this is preposterous. Oh, this is this. Now, I have to take a break. I want to continue on this point. I don't know what a court's going to do or what a jury's going to do or all the rest of it. I have no idea. None. Except I know it shouldn't be in front of a jury with criminal charges. That much I know. More when I return. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
If we've learned anything over the past 2 years, it's that unexpected things can happen. For example, average IRA and 401k balances fell 20% last year, according to Fidelity. We didn't expect that, but here's something that could help if you have an IRA or 401k. Physical gold in your IRA. The World Gold Council says even central banks are buying tons of gold. Now, what does that tell you? Learn why many Americans are turning to a gold IRA with Augusta Precious Metals. They're the best. I recommend them to my friends and family. You should call Augusta and get their ultimate guide to gold IRAs. Feels good to know there's another savings option. Diversity is the key. Call Augusta Precious Metals at 8774-GOLD-IRA. That's 8774-GOLD-IRA, 8774-GOLD-IRA. Consult your financial professionals before making investment decisions and get disclosures at AugustaPreciousMetals.com. The onus should never have been placed on a former president to figure out a myriad of defenses to a rogue prosecutor's efforts. That's not the way this is supposed to work. Lyndon Johnson had classified information removed about the Vietnam War in 1968. One of his aides, Rostow, took the information at his direction. This is before there was a Presidential Records Act. Again, no justification for it. Those records were kept from the public, give or take half a century. So the why question is one they're never going to answer. Well, why did the archives let him get away with it? Why wasn't he pursued with a federal grand jury? Why weren't his lawyers dragged in front of a federal grand jury? Because it's outrageous. That's not the purpose of the Espionage Act. The Espionage Act originally was created to go after spies. And in the case of Woodrow Wilson, his political opponents. It got bigger and bigger and bigger, the mishandling of information, the retention of information, but it was never seen as a trap or a web to get a president or a vice president or a secretary of state or an attorney general. I'll be right back. If we've learned anything over the past 2 years, it's that unexpected things can happen. For example, average IRA and 401k balances fell 20% last year, according to Fidelity. We didn't expect that, but here's something that could help if you have an IRA or 401k. Physical gold in your IRA. The World Gold Council says even central banks are buying tons of gold. Now, what does that tell you? Learn why many Americans are turning to a gold IRA with Augusta Precious Metals. They're the best. I recommend them to my friends and family. You should call Augusta and get their ultimate guide to gold IRAs. Feels good to know there's another savings option. Diversity is the key. Call Augusta Precious Metals at 8774-GOLD-IRA. That's 8774-GOLD-IRA, 8774-GOLD-IRA. Consult your financial professionals before making investment decisions and get disclosures at AugustaPreciousMetals.com.
The Mark Levin Show, live and national at 877-381-3811.
Now, Bill Barr said more yesterday with Brett Baer. I really like Brett Baer. He's a hell of a reporter. Cut to go.
Using the Espionage Act to make the decision at first to go after him like this, you think is justified?
Now, let's stop here. That is a very good question. Let's hear what he says. Go.
The law against willfully retaining national defense information.
Even though it's the President of the United States. At the time, he's leaving with it as the President of the United States.
Yeah, that was a reason. That is a sound charge. That is right. He did not have the right to keep those documents. And
Did he not say in the prior clip, Mr. Producer, that this is not a documents possession case, but an obstruction case? And now I hear him saying here he did not have a right to possess these documents. You see, folks, obstruction can't possibly come before a determination about an underlying law in which the government is seeking, in this case, documents. This is why he's making no sense to me. You criminalize a case like this, then you say obstruction is separate and apart from the underlying crime. And so he wants it both ways. There would be no, quote-unquote, conspiracy to obstruct, which is a crime, but for the criminalization of a civil act, an administrative act. So that's a circular argument, and it's an outrageous position, particularly since Donald Trump is the only person to ever hold top public office, president, vice president, even a cabinet secretary, to be treated this way. And, of course, their retort will be, well, he should have given the documents. No. That is a dispute. That's okay. Go ahead.
Here, put yourself in the government's position. You don't know what he has. He can have, you don't know what's at risk.
Why don't you know what he has? You don't know where your classified information is? You don't know what he has? Even so, how would a civil order, going to a court seeking an order for the production of information, even an urgent order, we need it in a week, we need a list, we need whatever, that would give you the same information, probably quicker than waiting 3 months, going dark for 3 months. 3 months. That's how urgent it was. 3 months. And then getting a search warrant. And then doing a SWAT team examination. Does this make any sense to anybody? No. Go ahead.
To see that stuff. What are they to do?
What I just said. But of course they should know. If they believe it's top secret information that it's missing, they're supposed to know that. What are they to do? Check the records. Go to a federal judge. Get an order. Tell the judge, we don't know what he's got. And we don't know that they're telling us everything. Go ahead.
That was a legitimate charge, but I don't think they would have charged it had he given the documents back. It was the obstruction of the subpoena that I think led the department to pull the trigger.
Okay, now he's not making any sense whatsoever. He just moved in 2 sentences from it's a possession issue to an obstruction of a subpoena. And this is the way it works. Bouncing back and forth and back and forth. I do think he's right, though. When you have a Democrat jury in a Democrat city, whether it be New York, Atlanta, even Miami, you have a pretty good shot. A pretty good shot. So what? What kind of prediction is that? It's no prediction at all. And so, from my perspective, Bill Barr doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Now, he's not the only one. He's not the only one. He's the most prominent. Andy McCarthy used to be a buddy of mine. Another former this or former that. He said the other day that Presidential Records Act doesn't apply because most of these records weren't created by the White House. I thought to myself, are you kidding me? The issue isn't who created the documents. The issue is in whose possession they are. Not who created the documents. Why would you say such a ridiculous thing? Then today, apparently on the Hugh Hewitt show, and I don't know the full extent of it, he says, I don't even know how the president defends when it comes to the declassification of information because he'd have to testify. Well, that's how he would defend. What are you talking about? I guess you should just surrender and say, okay, throw me in prison for 250 years. I've always wanted to die in prison. I am just shocked by this. Here's something. The Espionage Act has no application here. None. It didn't have any application when it came to President Johnson. Didn't have any application in any other case. Do you know the National Archives cannot tell us today if any other president or how many presidents have taken classified information with them? They can't even tell us. And if they could, they said they won't. What's that all about? What's that all about? So let's at least agree that this is a case of first impression, since this has never been done before. Can we agree to that, Mr. Producer? He's the only one that's been charged. Correct, America? Whether you want to call it an obstruction case, a possession case, or in the case of Bill Barr, call it both cases, depending on, depending on something. You don't take a case of first impression and bring a slew of indictments. You don't do that. And you certainly don't do it with an ex-president. And you certainly don't do it with an ex-president who's running for president again. Because the matter is not going to be resolved before the election's over. That's a huge problem. Huge. It's a huge problem. But if you're Jack the Ripper Smith, you don't care. The case of Bob McDonnell, the former Republican governor of Virginia, he ruined him. He took a basic bribery statute and he so massively expanded it to include meetings and phone calls and all these other things that the Supreme Court, in an 8-0 decision, it was a very pointed decision, reversed the conviction. So Bill Barr is right. You might be able to get a conviction, but is it right to get the conviction? Now, the head of the public integrity section at that point, the man who signed off on it, was Jack the Ripper Smith. Then in John Edwards, I've been the first to raise this, just so you know, in North Carolina, brings another preposterous case, jury in North Carolina, massively expanding the campaign finance laws to include payments to his girlfriend, as well as putting her up in an apartment while he's running for president and raising donations for that purpose. It was Jack the Ripper Smith contention, again, head of the public integrity section, that money wasn't reported and it violated the limitations on how much a federal candidate can raise. And you might say, well, why? What does that have to do with anything? Because he took the law and he expanded it. He expanded it. He expanded it to include those donations, which had nothing to do with the law whatsoever, but he wanted to get Edwards. Some of these guys, they don't care about doing justice. Doesn't matter. There were 6 felonies brought. One where the jury found Edwards not guilty. The other 5 was a hung jury, and as it turned out, there were a couple of holdouts. The overwhelming majority of the jury was opposed to this. And ABC News interviewed them. The vast majority of them said there wasn't any evidence. There wasn't any evidence. One said there wasn't enough evidence. This is the same guy who's now taken the Espionage Act and twisted it into a pretzel with the cheerleading of Bill Barr and Andy McCarthy. And I don't take this personally whatsoever. It's a debate. It's a debate. That's what it is. Who've taken, in my view, insane positions when it comes to the Espionage Act because they can't answer the why. Why? Why wasn't Hillary Clinton even investigated for obstruction? Why? Why weren't her lawyers, who had a very active role in destroying the emails, why weren't they brought before a grand jury? Why wasn't there a grand jury? Why wasn't there attorney-client privilege undermined through the crime-fraud exception? Why did none of these things happen? If Bill Barr is right, they should have, should they not? And again, she didn't even have the Presidential Records Act to deal with. And here's another why. Why did a Clinton, in the Clinton Sox case, where an Obama appointee 11 years ago ruled that the Presidential Records Act gave a very broad right to a former president to determine what is his personally, and she, and not the National Archives or anybody else, had the power under that federal statute to claim otherwise. Why did she rule that way, Bill Barr? Why did she rule that way, Andy McCarthy? Why? And with a case out in the open like that, how come the Attorney General didn't trigger the Espionage Act, impanel a grand jury, and go after Bill Clinton? Why? Why? Yeah, why? I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
If we've learned anything over the past 2 years, it's that unexpected things can happen. For example, average IRA and 401k balances fell 20% last year, according to Fidelity. We didn't expect that, but here's something that could help if you have an IRA or 401k. Physical gold in your IRA. The World Gold Council says even central banks are buying tons of gold. Now, what does that tell you? Learn why many Americans are turning to a gold IRA with Augusta Precious Metals. They're the best. I recommend them to my friends and family. You should call Augusta and get their ultimate guide to gold IRAs. Feels good to know there's another savings option. Diversity is the key. Call Augusta Precious Metals at 8774-GOLD-IRA. That's 8774-GOLD-IRA, 8774-GOLD-IRA. Consult your financial professionals before making investment decisions and get disclosures at AugustaPreciousMetals.com. No, I share a lot with you folks that I suppose most broadcasters don't. On Tuesday night, I want to apologize to you. I worked very hard all 3 hours of my radio show because I respect you, to present you with a substantive program, an interesting program. I go over things I don't believe others do. We try to have a good time as well. We laugh, we entertain. There's music I like. But of course, at the top of the list is saving the country. Well, the third hour, I got, information that my wife was ill. She'd been taken to the hospital in an ambulance. And I couldn't just leave the microphone. Although, trust me, I thought about it. I know the show was choppy. It's not what I want it to be. And I'm in the state of Florida, and she's in the state of New Jersey, for crying out loud. There were no jets getting out of here Tuesday night, so I did Hannity, as I had promised. Then I worried. And the next day, she turned the corner. I'm not going to get into specifics. I don't want to violate HIPAA, Mr. Producer. Anyway, the good news is she went home. She's at home now. And I'll be back this weekend as well. So I just wanted to apologize to you for that. I wasn't thrilled with that hour, but that's the best I could do under the circumstances. I'll be right back. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. Now we get this, and there's a lot more to get to tonight, by the way, but George Stephanopoulos, who's supposed to be a news host, but of course is a phony and a fraud and a fake, he's a Democrat partisan. He's got this rhino Miami mayor on, Francis Suarez. He's a rhino. I don't know why he's running for president. I guess he thinks a few debates and his charm and his charisma will win us all over. Guy's a mayor. No offense. It's a mayor. Not even a governor. Well, what about Trump? He wasn't even mayor. No, he's a multi-billion-dollar businessman. That's what was refreshing. But a mayor? Seriously? But this guy's a rhino. We know what he is. But that's beside the point. There is Stephanopoulos, a Clinton hitman, dressed up as a journalist, but aren't they all? Cut 7, go.
Sir, there's a very big difference between those two cases. President Biden turned them over himself. Had Donald Trump turned over all those documents, he wouldn't have been charged. I'm asking you about his behavior.
All right, wait a minute. Hello, slow down there, brother. If Donald Trump had handed over all those documents, he wouldn't have been charged, America. And that's exactly what Joe Biden did, he tells us. Folks, Joe Biden stole documents out of the Senate SCIF. In order to remove documents out of the Senate SCIF, you have to hide those documents. You don't get to take out a file with classification numbers and codes on the cover. He stole the file out of the Senate SCIF. Now, that would seem to be an act of obstruction, don't you think, Bill Barr? That seems to me to be a violation of the Espionage Act. I mean, he wasn't a former president, he was a senator. Right, Bill? I just want to make sure I have this right. But we're not charged. As soon as they found out, they turned him. No, they didn't. He knew about it. since he was a senator, because he stole them. So that's a lie, and so the media are out there pushing their crap as they always do. As soon as he was called, they were in his garage with his Corvette. They were in his office that was funded and subsidized by the communist Chinese military. But it doesn't matter, you see, because according to them, we're talking about obstruction, not the Espionage Act. Go ahead, Mr. Producer.
Showed concern for the proper concern for classified material. Do you think it was reckless? Do you think it was legal?
Like I said before, I'm not an expert on these kinds of matters, but I do want to say this, that this conversation is not a healthy conversation for the country. We should be talking about the issues that Americans care about. We shouldn't be talking about, candidates being indicted. And I think if we start having a healthier conversation in this country, which is, by the way, all the messages that I've received in the last 24 hours about how refreshing my candidacy is and how different it is because it's positive and unifying and focused on a positive future.
No offense. Most of us don't know who you are and what your campaign's doing. And I'm not trying to be rude. And we shouldn't be talking about this. They just did it. And they only did it to one candidate. We need to be talking about this. Do we want to? No, but we must. You don't just give up the playing field to the Marxists and the Democrats, one and the same. Now's the time to stand up and battle them. With all due respect. At least that's my view. I'm not going to play Andrew Weissman anymore, Mr. Producer. We are going to remove him forevermore from this program. He's a punk. He's a buffoon. And he's dishonest. So we're just not going to listen to him anymore. Biden got a little uppity. May I say that? I think I will. When a reporter says, why are you referred as the big guy? The big guy. And by the way, in more than one place now, he's referred to as the big guy. In the Hunter Biden laptop. And when it comes to the FBI Form 1023, he's the big guy. Mr. 10%. Cut 3, go.
Why did the Ukraine and the FBI form the file refer to as the big guy? Why is that term continuously applied? Thanks, guys. Thank you, question.
His answer is, why do you ask such a dumb question? Well, a lot of people are asking a lot of questions. Of course, most of them aren't in the media. Democrat Party is the Praetorian Guard circling the wagons. Democrats in the media, that is, most of them. They're circling the wagons. Everybody's circling wagons. We're running out of wagons. And, of course, Joe Biden's walking in a circle backwards, but that's a whole other story. You're not allowed to ask him why he's referenced, not once but twice, as the big guy. Why do you ask such a dumb question? Oh, okay. Why don't you get your ass in front of a podium for an hour and let people ask all kinds of dumb questions if they're so dumb you won't have any problem answering them, rather than shuffling off, or worse yet, never showing up. Put that idiot Jean-Pierre, whatever the hell her name is, put her out front. She's as bumbling and stumbling as you are. Guy wants to be president a second time. God forbid. Why do you have such a dumb question? Okay, what's with this 10%? I guess the Daily Mail's asking a dumb question today, too. They had their forensic experts, accountants, and others take a look at these S corporations that the Bidens set up in order to avoid Obamacare and Medicare taxes. Because, you know, they believe everybody should have skin in the game. And as they looked at it and went over all the public filings, they could not account for $5.2 million. Where did he get this $5.2 million from, they want to know. Seems like a good question, don't you think, Bill Barr? Seems like a good question to me. Andy McCarthy, you agree? Yeah, I think so. I think we can all agree on that. Where do you get the money from? Then the question is, that's just one instance. What's with all these other corporations that were set up by the Communist Chinese and Hunter Biden, as Peter Schweitzer has written about extensively, to funnel over $30 million into the Biden crime family? What's that all about? Comer and his committee found 20 shell corporations under the legal nomenclature LLC that has an effect, that is, to keep the information away from you, and they're perfectly legitimate, unless you have 20 of them, and they exist for the purpose of money laundering and have no business or personal purpose other than to commit an offense. Now, maybe Bill Barr, former Attorney General twice, maybe can explain to us why. Why is there no special counsel in that case? And how come you're not on TV squawking about that? I mean, there's more reasons to have a special counsel to look at Joe Biden than are even imaginable. There's only one group really pounding away here: conservative journalists and the Republicans in the House, and a handful of Republicans in the Senate. Where's Mitch McConnell? Nowhere. John Thune? Nowhere. John Cornyn? Nowhere. And the rest of the pallbearer Republicans, where are they? Nowhere. Out there spewing their crap on Trump. That's where they are. Question for you, George Stephanopoulos. How did top secret information from the Senate SCIF wind up in Joe Biden's possession? How come you can't answer that? Well, the cases are completely different, you know. Answer the question. If they're so different, how come there's different treatment between Trump and every president since 1917? And even lower level public officials. 1917. I challenge Bill Barr tonight, right here behind this microphone. I challenge Andy McCarthy. I challenge them all to demonstrate to me any time in the history of this statute, going back to 1917, where it was ever contemplated that it would ensnare a president, a vice president, or a cabinet secretary. Well, they didn't do what Trump did. Sure they did. Hillary Clinton did far worse. Lyndon Johnson did far worse. I would argue Biden did far worse when he stole documents out of the SCIF as a senator. None of them were investigated under the Espionage Act. Well, you know, you're jerking the government around. It's the job of a defense lawyer to jerk the government around. How about that? Oh, yes, he said it. You don't just roll over to the FBI, roll over to these prosecutors. You fight them, particularly if you think you're right. Particularly if you think you're right. It's the way it's supposed to work. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile. If you're with them, you're overpaying, pure and simple. Pure Talk can easily save your family over $900 a year. Right now, get unlimited talk, unlimited text, and ultra-fast 5G data for just $20 a month. $20 a month. What about the coverage, you ask? It's phenomenal. I'm on it. Pure Talk uses the most dependable 5G network in the nation. Just go to puretalk.com and use promo code Levin Podcast to get unlimited talk, text, and plenty of data. Just $20 a month. Pure Talk's amazing U.S. customer service team will make switching very easy. So choose a veteran-owned company that cares about keeping jobs in America and saving you money. Go to puretalk.com. Use promo code Levin Podcast for unlimited talk and text with plenty of 5G data for just $20 a month. Again, when you go to puretalk.com and use promo code Levin Podcast, you'll save an additional 50% off your first month with Pure Talk. All right, I've got to get to a few other things here because they're crucially important. I want you to know what the Biden administration is doing with Iran right now. China has provided Iran with hypersonic missile technology. Iran now is working with hypersonic missiles. Our defense systems cannot blow hypersonic missiles out of the sky. And Iran does have the technology now to develop nuclear weapons. And they're in the process of doing it. So when you combine the two, they can hit the United States with nuclear weapons. And this is an Islamonazi regime that believes in the next life, not this life. But even more now, ladies and gentlemen, Joe Biden and his administration are working on an agreement, another one, with the Islamo-Nazi regime in Tehran, which is backed by communist China, which is backed by fascistic Russia, which is backed by the inbred in North Korea. A deal that would not be in writing. An oral agreement where billions and billions of dollars would be delivered to the Iranians. They would promise that they would stop doing what they're doing, and we would take their word for it, Mr. Producer. We did the same damn thing with the North Koreans, and now they have intercontinental ballistic missiles with nuclear warheads. And if Iran makes that final step, they will own the Middle East. Biden is selling out the United States of America to Iran. Listen to me, even you isolationists. Biden is selling out the United States of America to Iran. Whereas Donald Trump was as close as can be to toppling that regime. This is why, it's 7,000 miles away. Really? Well, hypersonic missiles have a way of making that up in about 23 minutes. 23 minutes. Imagine if they fire 25 of them off. Imagine if they just explode them in our atmosphere. There goes the electrical grid. Oh, well. So 98% of us will die within 60 days. Maybe we can all go live in Belize. Maybe they'll leave us alone there. We can watch the oceans. We can watch the porpoise. By the way, as a footnote, Mr. Producer, you see what these damn orcas are doing, these killer whales? They're attacking ships. They sunk one. They're geniuses, these animals in the water. They're geniuses. They're the biggest predator in the ocean. You know what their favorite meal is? The liver of the great white shark. The great white sharks try to outrun the orcas, and they can't. Even off of Australia and so forth. They're now attacking boats and ships. All right, that aside. This is a deadly situation. I haven't heard a single Democrat raise any concerns about this. Not one. It's with these people in Washington, D.C. So that's what he's doing. Xi thinks he can get away with anything. Iran thinks they can do whatever the hell they want. And that's what's going on. And that is dangerous as hell. It's frightening. A verbal agreement? You know, under the deal that Obama cut, excuse me, and I guess Biden too, some years ago, as a matter of statutory legislation, a matter of law, any changes need to be in writing. So Trump got rid of it altogether. But Biden's bringing it back. He's bringing it back. Here's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. When you do something like this, whether it's that first outrageous deal or this, it's a treaty that's supposed to involve the United States Senate. The United States Senate is supposed to be involved as a partner with the president. 3/4 of the senators present, not just 3/4 of the senators, 3/4 of the senators present when this comes up for a vote have to just support a treaty. What was going through the framers' mind? What was going through their mind was, if you're going to have a treaty with another sovereign country, the body politic has to be involved. You can't do it secretly. You can't do it by a verbal agreement or a handshake, because it affects each and every one of us, whether you live in a small village in the United States, a small town, in a rural area, the exurbs, the suburbs, in the middle of a major metropolitan city. It doesn't matter. It affects all of us. We're talking about nuclear weapons. We have a right to know. Am I right, Bill Barr? We have a right to know. Because our country, our communities, our families, and our lives are all on the line. It's not left up to a handful of politicians. And you haven't heard a damn thing about this from anyone in the media, have you? Certainly no news organization. I'll be right back. Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile. If you're with them, you're overpaying, pure and simple. Pure Talk can easily save your family over $900 a year. Right now, get unlimited talk, unlimited text, and ultra-fast 5G data for just $20 a month. $20 a month. What about the coverage, you ask? It's phenomenal. I'm on it. Pure Talk uses the most dependable 5G network in the nation. Just go to puretalk.com and use promo code Levin Podcast to get unlimited talk, text, and plenty of data. Just $20 a month. Pure Talk's amazing U.S. customer service team will make switching very easy. So choose a veteran-owned company that cares about keeping jobs in America and saving you money. Go to puretalk.com. Use promo code Levin Podcast for unlimited talk and text with plenty of 5G data for just $20 a month. Again, when you go to puretalk.com and use promo code Levin Podcast, you'll save an additional 50% off your first month with Pure Talk.
Mark Levin, the thunder on the right. Call in now, 877-381-3811.
Communist China is preparing for war. Let me be as blunt as I know how. Communist China is on a war footing. Hello. Communist China is on a war footing. They're going to invade Taiwan, and we are going to have people in our country saying, pseudo-conservatives, with conservative organizations and think tanks. It's none of our business. Like the Sudetenland, it's none of our business. I mean, after all, there are people there who speak German. After all, there's people in Taiwan who speak Chinese. You know, they worked together at one point, right? Right, sure. As the world gets smaller and smaller, and we get smaller and smaller in it. I blame Republicans and Democrats for this in Congress. I'd say about a third of the Republicans in Congress, particularly in the House, don't believe we should muscle up our defense. Many of them sound like George McGovern did in the 1970s. I don't know if all of you remember him, but some of us certainly do. And they'll point to waste, fraud, and abuse in the Pentagon. Yes, there's waste, fraud, and abuse in the Pentagon. There was waste, fraud, and abuse in the Union military during the Civil War. That's why they set up what they called qui tam laws, where basically individual citizens were deputized to try and find if there was any fraud, and they could participate in the process and get money out of it. Doesn't mean you He didn't fight the Civil War. Waste, fraud, and abuse during World War II. And there's waste, fraud, and abuse today. Why? It's the government. That's why. I don't excuse it. I just explain it. And I suspect there's waste, fraud, and abuse in the Chinese military too, but it's quite beside the point when you're fighting for your lives and your liberty. And that day's going to come. And I don't want to be here telling you I told you so, because if I'm here telling you I told you so, it's over. We need to be the most powerful force, human force, on the face of the earth. Primarily to protect ourselves. The world's getting smaller and smaller. Technology is becoming more and more dangerous. Hypersonic missiles? We're not even in the game yet. We don't have one that works yet. Do you know this? And the original technology was stolen from us. And then we have a man sitting in the Oval Office, the Manchurian president, who's received millions of dollars directly and indirectly from the Communist Chinese, their military, their state-run operations, members of his family. Let's be blunt. The Communist Chinese own the Biden family. I don't care what the New York Times says. They covered up for Stalin. They covered up for the Third Reich, for God's sakes. And they helped install Castro. Why do I care what the damn New York Times has to say? I don't care what the Washington Post has to say. They were handed out Pulitzer Prizes for reporting on Russia collusion. But there was no Russian collusion. Except with Hillary and the Democrats. What do I care what they have to say? Or Stephanopoulos and Mad Cow and all the other miscreants and malcontents to our platforms. What do I care what that idiot Joe Scarborough has to say? Or the idiot... don't get me started. What do I care? These are the facts. This is what's taking place. You don't want to wake up one day and it's too late. I wish doesn't work anymore. It will not be said as it was when we were attacked at Pearl Harbor, that we weren't warned. I, for one, am warning everybody. This is one of the largest broadcast platforms in the world. Right here, this microphone. In the world. I'm screaming at the top of my lungs. It can't be said that we weren't warned about the Communist Chinese. It can't be said that we weren't warned about the Islamonazi regime in Iran and the rest of them, their allies. Because we are, right now. War is about to break out in the Middle East. The Prime Minister of Israel said, if we have to go it alone, we'll go it alone. He's right. He has to. This is the worst possible situation for the state of Israel to have Biden in the presidency. It's a disaster. And then the left in Israel, much like the left in America, they're Marxists. They're undermining their own country. They're weakening it from within. Funded by various organizations in America, various billionaires in America, as well as the radical left in Israel. The radical left in Israel would rather Israel lose a war to the Iranians than Netanyahu be a successful prime minister. It's unbelievable. Excuse me. And they even have a real crazy-ass problem there. Their military, certain aspects of their military, they'll go on strike. You ever heard of such a thing, Mr. Producer? They'll go on strike. That day's coming here, just a matter of time. Once we get past the woke phase, you know, if you want breasts, get breasts. You don't want your genitalia, get rid of it. You want to replace it. You don't want any, take out the sewing box. Do whatever you want. Don't worry, Joe Biden had a Roman circus right there on the southern lawn of the White House. People showing their real breasts, people showing their fake breasts. It was quite a party. And, thinking about this the other day, you burn the American flag, millions of people in this country not only don't give a damn, they agree with you. You burn the pride flag, it's probably a crime. And somebody will beat the crap out of you. That kind of says it all to me. But Joe Biden likes to be the great savior. He's now the great savior of the black population. In his youth, having tried to prevent the black population from going to schools with little white kids, when he was a young senator working very, very closely with the worst of the racists in the Senate. Oh, yeah. Now he's the savior. He's bigger than Martin Luther King. Joe Biden knows white racism when he sees it. It's called a mirror. It's called a mirror. Tell me, how many of you were racists when you were 29, 30, 31, 32 years old? How many of you talked about the government creating jungles if they allowed little black kids to go to school with little white kids? How many of you were praised by George Wallace? How many of you were mentored by John Eastland of Mississippi and John Stennis? How many of you? How many of you called Robert Byrd your mentor? Joe Biden did all of these things. And yet they call Trump a racist who did none of these things. And yet they call you a racist. And yet the man who did all these things calls you a racist. I can't wait. I can barely wait. I will announce to you right now, even though the Democrat Party hates America, that's the title of the book. It'll be accessible on Amazon starting next Tuesday. It doesn't come out till September 19th. And that's the nature of the schedule. That's how long it takes to print a book these days. The papers, they even have shortages of paper because of the supply chains. I've never heard of such a thing. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile. If you're with them, you're overpaying, pure and simple. Pure Talk can easily save your family over $900 a year. Right now, get unlimited talk, unlimited text, and ultra-fast 5G data for just $20 a month. $20 a month. What about the coverage, you ask? It's phenomenal. I'm on it. Pure Talk uses the most dependable 5G network in the nation. Just go to puretalk.com and use promo code Levin Podcast to get unlimited talk, text, and plenty of data. Just $20 a month. Pure Talk's amazing U.S. customer service team will make switching very easy. So choose a veteran-owned company that cares about keeping jobs in America and saving you money. Go to puretalk.com. Use promo code Levin Podcast for unlimited talk and text with plenty of 5G data for just $20 a month. Again, when you go to puretalk.com and use promo code Levin Podcast, you'll save an additional 50% off your first month with Pure Talk. Some people say, not many, Mark, you take these strong positions. And I'm sure there's a certain percentage of people in your audience who don't agree or are not sure. And I said, that's okay. At least they know where I stand and why I stand where I stand. And you folks should know that we are on over 400 stations in this country. And I see the ratings for every single one that has ratings. And that we slaughter our competition in every single market where there is an across the street talk station. New York, L.A., and down the list. On some cities, there aren't 2 or 3, there's one. There's one, so I'm not worried about it. You, my audience, you're very loyal. Some of you listen to the program on terrestrial radio, AM, FM. Some of you listen on satellite. We have a huge satellite listening audience. They say they can't tell us exactly. I don't believe it. But it doesn't matter. It is what it is. Our podcast, remarkably enough, we barely even talk about it here. It's one of the biggest in the nation. And we run the radio show. That's what we do. Because a lot of times people want to listen in their own time, in their own place, or if there's preemptions or whatever. We barely even mention it. But I want to thank you because what we do here is engage in thinking and argumentation and explanation, and we don't have to agree on everything. We're not Marxists who have to march in line with certain colors of boots on, always polished, with shirts typically brown. We're not Marxists, we're not fascists, we're constitutional conservatives. And this is what we do. There's a lot more when we come back. Really, this show needs to be at least 4 hours. I think I could do 4 hours. Especially New York, Mr. Producer. What do you think? They need a 4th hour. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877. Anyway, Barack Milhouse Benito Obama, who's now using tax loopholes he used to rail against. Like the missus, she was selling sugary juice drinks to little kids that she used to rail against. But really, with these two, it's anything for $1, I'll be perfectly honest with you. Anything. They're worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but it's not enough. It's not enough for these two Marxists. It's what they are, excuse you. But he's on some podcast. There's like 1 billion podcasts out there. Have you noticed? Anyway, he's on some podcast and he decides to comment about Tim Scott. He's asked about Tim Scott. They're both black men, obviously, and Tim Scott's a conservative and Obama's a Marxist. There's a big difference between the two. And so he has a warning for Tim Scott, being the egomaniac that Obama always has been. Cut 21, go.
If a Republican who may even be sincere in saying, I want us all to live together, doesn't have a plan.
Hold on, stop there. If a Republican who may even be sincere that he wants us all to live together. Now, Biden mostly lives in lily white neighborhoods. And he lives in neighborhoods mostly that the average person can't afford, white, black, brown, or in between. And he grew up in a white neighborhood in Hawaii. So he sounds like he's really down for the, revolution. And he's more like up for the these communities. Reminds me a little bit of LeBron James, quite frankly. These are revolutionaries who do not live in the streets. They live in paradises. And the whiter the neighborhood, the better, as far as they're concerned. To me, you know what I look for? Solitude. I don't want to be around anybody. White, black, brown, whatever. I don't even want to be around nature. What do you think of that, Mr. Producer? I don't mind looking at it. I just don't want to be in. People, hey, you want to take a hike? I'm like, what are you, out of your mind? Hey, you want to go on a boat? No. I get nauseous on a boat. Besides, do I look like a fish? No. Anyway, it's a whole nother story. So the neighborhood I'm looking for, really, honestly, Mr. Producer, is no neighborhood. No neighborhood. Now, all that said, Barack Billhouse Benito Obama talks the talk, and man, he never stops. He is one big carbon dioxide emitter. Let's start from the top. Cut 21, go.
If a Republican who may even be sincere in saying, I want us all to live together, doesn't have a plan for how do we address crippling generational poverty that is a consequence of hundreds of years of racism in the society. And we
all right, stop. I address this in the upcoming bestseller. Yes, it's all due to hundreds of years of racism, ladies and gentlemen. And the answer, of course, is 150 years, almost 200 years of Marxism. That'll fix it. Now you have countries. You have countries where the vast majority of the population is black. And there's some of the poorest countries on the face of the earth. Is that due to hundreds of years of racism? You have countries where the vast majority of the people are brown. Is that due to hundreds of years of racism? Some of the poorest parts of America, in Appalachia and so forth, are mostly white. Is that due to hundreds of years of racism? So this guy is a racialist. He is a race baiter. That's all he knows, as he hangs around white people and gets rich. And these billionaires who like being with Obama and Michelle. Hundreds of years of racism. That's the reason. That's the reason we have poverty. Not fileless homes. And by the way, I'm not saying every home that's fileless, the children turn out to be criminals and so forth. I know that not to be the case, but if you have a two-parent household, the chances are significantly better that the children will be raised better. Obama opposed school choice. That's a big way to improve communities, improve families, improve education, and get out of poverty. Obama opposes capitalism, except his own capitalism, where he and the missus have become extremely wealthy for doing nothing, literally nothing. And they will not let a single business opportunity pass. Like I said, the sugary fruit juices for children that Michelle supported. And by the way, it went broke so that they pulled her out already. She wasn't even embarrassed. I'm sure that organic garden at the White House that she built. Yeah. Well, you get the point. I'm sure Dr. Jill is tending to it properly. Oh, yeah. These are all frauds and phonies who are destroying the country, destroying our culture, destroying our neighborhoods. Biden, Obama, all these radical left-wing kooks. Go ahead.
About that. If that candidate is not willing to acknowledge that,
yes,
again and again we've seen discrimination in everything from getting a job to buying a house to...
Okay, stop. What are you talking about? What exactly are you talking? Where are you talking about? Who are you talking about? Enough with the generalizations. What are you talking about? We got people pouring over our border from Africa, from Central South America, from the Caribbean, also from the Middle East, from China, Russia, other parts of Eastern Europe, pouring into this country from every corner of the globe. So what is he talking about? He's an idiot. Did he say that? Yes, I did. He's an idiot. Obama is an idiot. He's so... He thinks everything he says is so important. He thinks it through, and then he hangs on his own syllables. Have you noticed? Go ahead.
Operates, and so that somebody who does the exact same offense, the kind of sentencing, the likelihood that they do jail time is going to be different.
What are you talking about again? You know, this guy is really schizophrenic. On the one hand, just to show his street cred, he hates the country. Trashes the country. On the other hand, he can't get enough of the yachts. He can't get enough of the Hollywood billionaires and millionaires. He can't get enough of the gated communities in Washington, D.C. and so forth and so on. I believe he's on Martha's Vineyard, too, which has like a 2% black population. I think when he and the family moved there, they doubled the black population. But you get my point. You won't find him in Camden, New Jersey, that city that I grew up next to. Newark, New Jersey. East Palo Alto. East St. Louis. You won't find him in these places. He wouldn't be caught in those places no matter what. And then he talks like this. This is all addressed because I'm sick of it. And I could have written this for him. We've heard it so many times. And so it's the system, you see, that keeps progress back. It's the system that stands in the way of the people. It's like no progress is ever made. No laws have ever been changed. No wars have ever been fought. No. Nothing's changed. This guy was president of the United States. What did he do for the people of America? Nothing. And I'll be honest, what did he do for the black community? Absolutely nothing. Nothing. He's an ideologue. He lives high while he pushes Marxism. And by the way, that's typical of these Marxists. They live one way and they expect the rest of us to live another, mostly in servitude to them. If he really cared about education in poor communities, he'd support school choice. There's a lot of black people who do. He's not one of them. He'd support more cops in the most violent areas of our cities, but he doesn't. He'd support long sentences for recidivists who kill people, who rape people, who rob stores and the stores shutter. But he doesn't. He just supports redistribution of wealth, talking about 200 years ago. Same thing day in and day out. He might as well be Bernie Sanders. It doesn't matter. It's the same ideology. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Jerusalem Post. Nuclear deal nears freeing Iranian funds and U.S. prisoners. So now he's also going to trade funds for prisoners. This guy violates every rule, this Biden. Nuclear deal nears. The expected deal would have the U.S. provide sanctions relief in exchange for Iran limiting its nuclear program. So they'll get billions up front, and we sit around and hope they don't violate the nuclear agreement. They've already violated the other nuclear agreement. I don't understand this. Like the North Koreans were going to keep their word? Or the Chinese government's going to keep its word? Or that clown Vladimir Putin? Sorry, you Putinoids out there. He's going to keep his word? Further details, ready, of an unwritten agreement between the United States and Iran regarding Tehran's nuclear program. I thought they weren't supposed to have one. Emerged overnight on Wednesday. The expected deal, which the sides negotiated in recent weeks via Oman, after talks to revive the 2015 nuclear agreement failed last year, would have the U.S. provide sanctions relief in exchange for Iran limiting its nuclear program. Limiting it, not eliminating it, and they're not going to limit a damn thing. They're going to take that money and run. And you know why? Because they know Biden won't be around forever, and it won't matter. Israeli officials warned for weeks that an agreement was coming, and many details of the plan have been reported in Israeli media. U.S. officials' willingness to confirm details to reporters at the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, at a level they were not willing to do before for articles released Wednesday, may be an indication of the deal's imminence. By the way, I would ask any United States senator, are you aware of this? Are you aware of this deal? How about in the House, this guy, Mike McCall? Are you aware of this deal, Mr. McCall? I haven't heard you say a damn thing. The agreement entails Iran curbing its uranium enrichment at 60%. Wait a minute. I didn't think they were doing it at all. Far beyond what was permitted in 2015, but below the 90% needed for a nuclear weapon. And how do we know they'll do that? We have no idea. The U.S. warned in the talks that it would exact a heavy price from Iran if it enriches to 90%. Like what? What would they do? The U.S. would waive sanctions, specifically allowing Iraq to pay more than $10 billion it owes Iran for gas and electricity. Oh, that's nice of us. And South Korea to pay it $7 billion for oil imports. That is a wash-through for the United States. South Korea doesn't owe Iran $7 billion for oil imports. The U.S. would not add further sanctions or pursue resolutions against Iran. The UN Security Council. Oh, wow. Last week, the U.S. waived sanctions and allowed Iraq to pay $2.76 billion to Iran. So now the money flows in so they can finish. The money flows in for their terrorism, for the conventional weaponry. Remember, this is the same government in the United States that surrendered to the Taliban and left tens of billions of dollars worth of equipment. And our allies and Americans. They're still American citizens in Afghanistan, if they're even alive. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller has repeatedly denied rumors about a nuclear deal, so he lied. This is what they do. The law requires the president to notify Congress within 5 days of any agreement with Iran relating to its nuclear program and transmit any related materials for 30 for a 30-day review period. It also requires the president to determine the agreement in no way compromises the commitment of the United States. Whatever. Netanyahu characterized the deal as a mini deal or an understanding rather than a formal agreement that would be put in writing. He said, our stance is clear. No agreement with Iran will obligate Israel. Israel will continue to do everything to defend itself. We still have different views, meaning than the United States. We do not hide them, even about small agreements. We make our stance clear in closed rooms and open ones. Wow, I'll tell you. It's unbelievable. You know, when you go to sleep at night, the extent to which this fool and his administration are still scurrying around, trying to do these horrific things, is really disgusting. I got to keep moving around this hour. There's just too much that I haven't gotten to. For instance, the Daily Caller. Catastrophic consequences, quote unquote. Top U.S. grid official sounds the alarm on coal and gas power plant closures. I want to get into this with you next hour because this is going to affect you as well, directly. A man-made catastrophe. A man-made catastrophe. It's right over the hill. It's right around the corner. I'll be right back.
Is that a copy of the Constitution you've got? Or are you just happy to see Mark Levin? Call him now at 877-381-3811.
Do television networks and stations have no standards anymore? I mean, anything that can be used with, against, or for the orifices is now advertised, Mr. Producer. Have you noticed this? Guy's sticking a Q-tip in his ear. He's invented something that squirts water in his ear. I don't know what the hell's going on there. Then you got some woman dermatologist. She's on TV talking about where to put this smell reducers. I'm going, oh my God. Is it just me? Then we get the erectile dysfunction. We get the crooked carrots. You've seen that commercial? I'm going, what the hell goes on here? As a little kid, nobody would dare to do that. I'm longing for the good old days. I'm getting older, I guess, but still, I just think children would be so better off. So better off. And then you have this, I'm going to call him what he is. This Joe Biden is a pervert. He's a pervert. Those clips where he's touching the little girl's shoulders and their necks and their hair and sniffing around, guy's a pervert. Tara Reid moved to Russia to get the hell away from this guy. And then this thing that took place on the South Lawn was disgusting. That's right, I said it. And then Joe Biden goes out there, talks about people wanting to remove books from our shelves. No, they want to remove pornography from the shelves of their little kids. But for Joe Biden, he must like it. He must like it. And look at Hunter Biden. Guy's a sleazeball in every respect. He's grotesque. Grotesque! And he says he's the smartest guy I know. I'll bet he is, Joe. Lined your pockets with millions, allegedly. This is a Daily Caller. Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, Commissioner Mark Christie. Please tell me he's not related to Chris Christie. Let me look. No way. The guy's not 412 pounds. Warned of the potential for catastrophic consequences. So these guys regulate and monitor what's going on the grid, oil and natural gas pipelines, and on and on and on. And he's saying, we have the potential for catastrophic consequences, quote unquote, for the reliability of the American power grid if the U.S. does not stop phasing out fossil fuel. The fossil fuel infrastructure, before renewable infrastructure is even capable of replacing its output. Christie made the remarks as part of his testimony at a hearing held by the House Committee on Energy and Commerce. Has anybody reported this to you? Other than the Daily Caller and me? No, nobody has, have they? Isn't that amazing? Then we're going to get, it's big oil did this to us. No, it's big government screws up everything. Said, I think we're heading for potentially very dire consequences, potentially catastrophic consequences in the United States in terms of the reliability of our grid. And I think that the basic reason is that we're facing a shortfall of power supply. We're destroying ourselves. No, check that. The Democrat Party's destroying us. The stark warning from one of the federal government's top energy regulators comes as the Biden administration continues to clamp down on fossil fuel production and infrastructure. Biden personally pledged a guarantee, quote unquote, that his administration would, quote, end fossil fuel, unquote, as a candidate for the presidency in 2019. Well, we know that hasn't happened with Gavin Newsom, right, Mr. Producer? He's got fossil fuel in his hair there. Quote, the problem is not the addition of wind and solar. The problem is the subtraction of coal and gas and other dispatchable resources, which are the ones we need during this transition to keep the lights on. That's the fundamental problem, he said. The grid has to have power being fed into it every second of every minute of every hour of every day to keep the lights on. Well, what would Joe Biden know about that? Christie warned that continued cascading retirements of coal and natural gas power plants could lead to energy shortages and outages for the country's power grid. The grid must, quote, have a power supply that is feeding into the grid on a continuous basis in order to stay operational at all times and avoid outages. To show you how bumpkin-like 10 to 20 of the Republicans are in the House and And probably a good 30 of them are in the Senate. The House yesterday effectively killed a resolution to censure Representative Adam Schiff, voting to motion the table instead. The chamber voted 225 to 196, with 7 either not present or abstentions to table the resolution. 20 Republicans voted with Democrats to table the measure, while 7 lawmakers, 5 Dems, 2 Republicans, voted present. I think it says that Trump and his MAGA supporters view me as a threat. Yeah, that Make America Great Again, that MAGA thing is really very upsetting to the Democrats, and because they don't believe in making America better. They believe in making America worse. Schiff said shortly after the resolution, there's a reason they singled me out. They think I was effective in holding them accountable, and they won't stop me. No, that's not why you were singled out. You're singled out because you're an a-hole. I think, frankly, this is deeply counterproductive to that goal, but that's their aim, to go after anybody that stands up to them, to try and make an example out of them. But it's not going to defer me for a moment. I know it won't, because you have a head injury. Representative Anna Paulina Luna, she's solid as a rock. She used to work with Charlie Kirk's group. Introduced the censure measure in May, but brought it to the floor as a privileged resolution on Tuesday, forcing the House to take action on the legislation. Democrat leadership motioned to table the measure, which requires a simple majority vote. And there you have it. Republicans couldn't even stand together on this one. Schiff, as chairman of the House Intel Committee, led the first impeachment. Her point is, look, he lied. He wastes government resources. He should be held to account, and he should repay those resources. That's what should happen. That's why she filed that resolution to expel Schiff, who's running for the Senate in California, and he could win, given what's going on in California today. But Luna did the right thing. Luna's censure resolution, which spans 4 pages, calls for censuring and condemning Schiff, quote, for conduct that misleads the American people in a way that is not befitting an elected member of the House. Would also direct the Ethics Committee to conduct an investigation into Schiff's lies, misrepresentations, and abuses of sensitive information. This guy went on and on and on. The way he lied and misled the American people. And by the way, the media loved it. And it would have fined him $16 million. I think they should have fined him $160 million. But what do I know? What do I know? I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Uh-oh, ladies and gentlemen. It's come down to this. What the hell's wrong with my iPhone? Can you tell me, Mr. Producer? It's the computer, it's the iPhone, it's the internet. I think I'm going to move to Belize and just live on the beach. A buddy of mine's done that. There's something to be said for that. Maybe Bermuda, where they walk around in those goofball shorts all the time. Breaking news at the Daily Mail exclusive. It's like crickets. Tucker Carlson begs to tell his version of his Fox News ousting to Joe Rogan's 11 million listeners, but the wildly successful podcast host refuses to take his calls. This recording to the Daily Mail, so we can't be 100% sure, Mr. Producer. Insiders tell DailyMail.com that Tucker Carlson is offering Joe Rogan an exclusive interview detailing his April ouster from Fox News. Carlson's producers began reaching out to Rogan 6 weeks ago, but a well-placed source says Rogan will simply not respond. It's like crickets. The snub comes despite Rogan stating on air that he'd love to chat with Carlson and his hit podcast, the Joe Rogan Experience. What kind of experience is that, Mr. Producer? I don't know. It's the blockbuster scoop that everybody in the media world wants to land. Everyone except Joe Rogan, it seems. For a while, Tucker Carlson is offering the Joe Rogan Experience. What is that? Seriously. Is that like a hemorrhoid or something? I don't know. The Joe Rogan Experience host first crack an exclusive interview detailing his April ouster from Fox. Sources tell the DailyMail.com the interest is not reciprocal. Joe, we hardly knew you. Insiders say Carlson's people began reaching out to Rogan's producers 6 weeks ago, believing his hugely successful Spotify podcast will be the perfect setting for an unabridged deep dive into the Fox meltdown. I'm quoting now. The two men, who boast millions of listeners on their respective platforms, are avowed champions of free speech and share a mutual disdain for cancel culture and identity politics. But a well-placed source told the DailyMail.com Joe will simply not respond. He's shown no interest. And having Tucker on, it's like crickets. Hold on, I got to get through. The Daily Mail has a lot of pictures. Come on now. Oh, the snub comes despite Rogan, who attracts an estimated 11 million. How many more times are they going to say that, listeners, per episode? Stating on air that he would love the chat. So it goes on. If in fact it's true. Am I the only person in the world that doesn't give a crap about Joe Rogan's podcast, Mr. Producer? I've never listened either. Maybe it's to a clip or two. Now, don't get me wrong. I enjoy his color commentating on UFC. But that's it. It's the guy that used to swing from ropes and all the other stuff they used to do. Remember that show? I forget the name of it. Fear Factor. Watch that for about 12 seconds. It's nothing personal. What do I care what Joe Rogan has to say? What's he do? He smokes pot on the air and stuff like that? It's okay. It's nothing personal with me. I'm not trying to attack the guy. Everybody would love to have 11.5 podcast listeners a day. Well, what is it that he tells them that's so compelling? You know, I really do think pot should be legal all across the country. One year he wants to support Bernie Sanders. Another year it's Ron DeSantis. I don't know what the hell's going on there. But perfectly fine. Do whatever you want. But there it is. According to the Daily Mail. My God, ladies and gentlemen. The world's crumbling around us. The enemy's on the march, within and without. And Joe Rogan is snubbing our buddy Tucker. It's hard to take. If I'm Tucker, you know whose show I'd like to go on, Mr. Producer? But I'm never invited. Megyn Kelly. Megyn Kelly says I don't like her. I don't know what she's talking about. I admit early on I used to throw a few mud balls here and there, but that's what I do. But I'm not begging. Don't get me wrong. I'm perfectly happy talking to 14.5 million people, perfectly happy with my own podcast, my own live streaming, the Mark Levin app, the Mark Levin Blaze program. I'm perfectly happy. Where was I? Ron DeSantis. He's at a press conference today. He has something to say to Governor Newsom. Cut 13, go.
And yet with all those problems, he has a real serious fixation on the state of Florida. I mean, I think it's just bizarre that he does that. But what I would tell him is, you know what? Stop pussyfooting around. Are you going to throw your hat in the ring and challenge Joe? Are you going to get in and do it, or are you just going to sit on the sidelines and chirp? So why don't you throw your hat in the ring, and then we'll go ahead and talk about what's happening. So
there's a man who's highly underestimated, and very stupidly so. He can go toe-to-toe with little Dabble, do you, out there in California any day of the week. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, emergency personnel, our truckers, the freedom fighters in Taiwan and Ukraine, and all of you folks. God bless all of you patriots out there. I'll see you tomorrow.